All right, good morning everybody and welcome to the Education Station. My name is Christina and I have my awesome friend Jessica over here. We both work in the education department at the Blank Park Zoo and we brought one of our special friends here to meet you guys today. So if you saw our event the other day on Facebook, it did show a different type of reptile in the picture. We were not able to bring Jersey with us today because she is shedding, and when snakes are shedding, their skin is a lot more sensitive versus if Moche was shedding, he just sheds little pieces here and there rather than the entire body of scales, and so he can come along even if he has some shedding spots, but Jersey probably wouldn't have been as big of a fan. But Moche here is a green iguana. He can be found down in South America, Central America, and there are some other places in the world that he's found, but he's known as invasive there. So the United States down in southern portions, they do have some iguanas in the wild, but that's not really a good thing for them to be there. So these guys would typically be found down in South America. Throughout this, by the way, you are welcome to send us questions and we will try to answer them. We'll try to answer them real time when Jessica sees them come up. Otherwise, we will just kind of give you some awesome facts about Moche. So he actually gets his name from a tribe of Peruvian people, and they worship iguanas, which is why we figured that would be a really good name for Moche, because he, as you can tell, really likes attention. Jessica's probably going to get to spend a majority of the time giving him nice back scratches, head scratches, and all that fun, because he loves that type of attention. Moche here is about 4.5 feet long. They can, fully grown, be about 5.5 feet. So from my toes to my head, that is about how long he could be from his nose to his tail. So these guys can get pretty big, but he's about 6 years old and pretty normal size for his age. Do we have any questions coming up?
Not yet.
No questions yet? All right. So a couple other fun things about him. You see this giant lizard and you think he's probably a scary guy. Actually, he is an herbivore, which means that he likes to eat plants, not meat. So he loves his salads. That's what he gets every single day. He gets fruits, he gets vegetables, he gets hay, all these types of greens that he enjoys eating. And you might even see a little bit of green stuck on his face there still from breakfast.
All right, Christina. Aiden, who's 3 years old from Des Moines, would like to know why he has a weird looking chin.
That is a great question. So Moche here is a male iguana, and they have that larger dewlap than females. That's what that weird kind of spot around his neck is, and then they have those big old puffy cheeks too. Those can be used for a bunch of different things. They can be used to help regulate his temperature when he gets too hot. He can expand it, let a breeze or wind blow on it to cool him off. It can also be used for territorial reasons or finding his girls when he really gets excited. You know, he can puff up those cheeks and nod his head and be like, "Hi, I want to say hi to you out in the wild." So they have a lot of different meanings.
All right.
Uses.
We had another question of, is there something in his cheek? And there isn't right now. These big pouches on the side of his face are called jowls, and that's how you know he's a male iguana. So female iguanas do not have these big cheek pouches, but the males do. All right, we have another question, Christina. Nick from Cedar Falls would like to know if there are different types of iguanas.
That is a great question. In general, there are different looking iguanas, but not types. They're all going to be green iguanas, whether they are green like Moche here, or whether they're red, yellow, orange. I believe there can even be some blue. So the different colors actually are due to different places that they're found in the wild, but they are all technically an iguana. So there isn't really much difference other than their colors.
Okay, we have another question from Julia in Des Moines. She wants to know how old Moche is.
Moche is about 6 years old. They can live upwards of 20 though, so he's still pretty young. He's got a lot of life left.
When he was born, how big do you think he was?
When these guys are born, when they hatch from their eggs, they are actually already around a foot long when they come out.
All right.
They're big guys.
Another couple questions. Bridget wants to know if he has any brothers or sisters.
Moche could very well have brothers and sisters. Typically, when the female iguana lays eggs, she lays anywhere from 20 to 70 eggs. But we do not have any of his brothers and sisters with us. We just have Moche, and he has a nice big old home to himself, which he enjoys.
All right. And where do they come from? Do you want to say that again? Yeah.
All right. So these guys can come from southern and Central America. They love the forest areas. They like to be up in the trees. And actually down there, they are called the chickens of the tree because some people do actually eat these guys. And there are so many of them around, it's not a big deal. But apparently they taste like chicken and they like to live in trees. So they got the nickname chickens of the tree.
Okay, how about, how do we know if he gets sick?
How do we know if he gets sick? He's a very good boy at letting us know if he's feeling good. If he's not feeling well, he'll start acting different. Just like if you're feeling sick, you might not want to move a lot. You might not be doing your normal behaviors. And so we know what a normal day is for him. And if he's kind of sitting in the corner and ignoring us and not really interested, then we might know that something is possibly up.
All right, we have another question. Where did the zoo get Moche from?
That is a great question. Do you possibly know that one?
I don't think I remember. I think he was from the ARL. We get a lot of animals from the ARL. We adopt them just like a lot of the ferrets that we get in our education department.
So there you go. He came from the ARL. A lot of people do have these guys as pets, but they do not realize how large they get. So that's probably how we got him. Was they got him when he was little and thought that he was cute, and then he got a little bit too big, and they didn't know what to do with him. And so we have a lot of animals like that in our department.
All right. And then April wants to know how many different kinds of iguanas there are.
That is a great question. I believe that there are 6 different colors, but I'm not actually sure. I will have to look that up when I'm done with this and let you know.
All right. And then Harrison and Hayden, hi guys. They want to know how, or do people have these as pets? I think you answered that just now too.
I did. So iguanas are a type of animal that people can have as pets, but as you see, he's a very big lizard. He's a very big boy, and so they can be good pets if you know how to properly take care of them and if you have a good enclosure for them to live in. Otherwise, you have these guys in a small place and they're going to get really cramped and not be happy.
All right, Derek, who's 7 years old, would like to know if they have teeth.
That is a good question. Iguanas do have teeth. They have itty bitty little tiny sharp teeth. And so that surprises people because, as I said earlier, these guys are herbivores. They love to eat their plants. But those sharp teeth are used for 2 different things. 1, they're used for breaking up those leaves, ripping them up so they can eat them a lot better. And then 2, they are used as defense if they need to, but they don't typically use them that often other than eating their food.
All right, that's awesome.
Do you guys want to know a really cool fact a lot of people don't know about iguanas?
I would love to know a really cool fact.
So it's kind of hard to see, but if he angles his head, look around the top of his head, and looks to be a little tiny diamond-like spot on the top of his head. That is known as a third eye. Do you know what the third eye is?
I don't know what the third eye is.
So the third eye helps these guys. Since I said earlier, they love to live in trees. They like to be up high. There can be other animals up above them though. So that third eye allows them to be able to feel the presence of an animal above, kind of give them shapes and shadows. It's not like a complete other eye where he can see everything, but it allows him to understand if there's something above him that he needs to be aware of, so then he can protect himself better. And since these guys do live in trees, do you think they're very good at climbing?
I would imagine that they would be.
They are great at climbing up, not always at climbing down. So these guys can actually drop anywhere from 40 to 50 feet to the ground and be perfectly fine. They bounce.
Oh, goodness. Okay, David wants to know how big of an enclosure we would need for him.
For a fully grown iguana, he would probably need anywhere from about 12 feet long to 10 feet high. They like to climb, so you need to have a lot of places for them to climb in that enclosure, and that's why they need really large areas, is so you can have all these branches for them to climb on.
All right, we have someone watching from Florida, and they want to know, this is Carl, and he wants to know if he can see in the dark.
These guys have excellent vision, so they can see colors, they can see shapes. They might not be able to see perfectly in the dark, but they're going to have a lot better night vision than we can. So they are very good at seeing all around and having different aspects of what they see.
All right. What are some of his favorite things to eat?
His favorite things to eat, he loves his fruits and vegetables, as I mentioned. He also gets alfalfa every day with his food, kind of giving him a little bit something different in there. I don't know what his favorite fruit is, though.
All right, I think
he does. We found out that he does love his dandelions.
Yeah.
So he enjoys eating those.
And I think when I fed him his breakfast this morning, I think he had some bell pepper in his breakfast and lots of greens and maybe even some mushrooms, I think I saw.
He did have mushrooms in his breakfast this morning. So he has a very good diet. If your mom ever tells you to eat your vegetables and fruit, be like Moche and eat them. He enjoys them.
All right, Daniel from Winterset wants to know if he sheds his skin.
So that is a great question. He does shed his skin, but rather than Jersey, who we were going to bring earlier, like I said, she sheds her skin all all in one piece. So that makes snakes extremely sensitive when they're shedding. Versus Moche, he'll shed patches of his skin at a time. He's not going to shed all of his skin at once. So they're not going to be as sensitive, and their scales are already going to be a little bit sturdier, a little bit tougher than snake scales. So he's not as sensitive, but he does shed his scales periodically.
Chrissy would like to know how much he weighs.
He weighs about 12 pounds, so that's a pretty good weight for him. We had to hold him the entire time, believe me, we'd be getting a nice workout.
And Keisha wants to know what his skin feels like and if it feels like a snake would.
That is a great question. His skin does not really feel like a snake would. Honestly, sandpaper is a really good representation. It's a really hard scale that if I went up this way, it would feel hard like sandpaper, but coming down this way, it just feels like a lot of tiny little pebbles on his body. It's very thick and bigger scaled, or not bigger, denser scales than snakes are.
All right, and Avi, hi Avi. Avi wants to know if iguanas are territorial.
That is a good question, and yes, they're going to be a little bit more territorial, especially the males. The males are going to be the ones that are going to want their area in the wild where this is their place, where they can get their girlfriends to come along and visit them, but they're going to have their set home. Kind of like you guys live in your own house, and it's kind of weird if a stranger comes into your house. Well, that's like him and his territory. He likes to make sure that that's his and his alone.
All right, a few more questions. So Crystal wants to know, does he lose his tail? And if he does, can it grow back?
I don't believe these guys can lose their tail. That's typically a thing for smaller lizards. Most smaller lizards can drop their tail and then grow it back because that is a really good self-defense for them. He's a little bit larger, so there's not a lot of big predators that dropping his tail is going to help him with, so they don't do that.
All right, Ryan wants to know, why do they fall out of trees when it's cold?
They probably don't fall out of trees when it's cold on purpose. It might be if they get a little bit colder, say the iguanas that live in the United States where it does get cold during the winter versus South America, not as much. It's probably because their body, they are cold-blooded animals rather than warm, so they have to keep themselves regulated with the heat around them. So when it does get cold out in the wild, they're going to get slower. They're not going to be as active. They're not going to move as much. And so it is possible that maybe they could get a little bit cold and lose their grip and fall.
All right. Rhonda would like to know if they can change color.
They can a little bit, not to the extent of chameleons. Their jowls are going to be the biggest thing that changes colors. When he gets really excited, they can get a darker color. Otherwise, if you see an orange iguana or a red iguana, all these different colors, that is their color of their scale. They're not going to be able to be like chameleons and go from green one day to yellow the next day.
All right. Keisha had another question. Do these animals hibernate?
That is a good question. They wouldn't go through a process called hibernation. Instead, they would go through something called brumation. And that would be, since these guys are from a warmer climate, they're not going to do that often. It would be during the dry season when maybe their food isn't as abundant, but pretty much what they'll do is their heartbeat will just get really slow and they'll kind of be dormant or sleeping, kind of not fully asleep, but they don't go through that process that often. But it would be called brumation if they did rather than hibernation.
All right, Julie would like to know how fast they can run.
That is a good question. I don't actually know. That is one that I will look up and I will answer that question once we're done with this video. I apologize for that.
Okay, Natasha would like to know, how old is he and how long can they live?
So Moche here is about 6 years old. We've had him since he's 1.5 years, so he's been with us for a while. In the wild or human care, there isn't much variation. They can actually live upwards of 20 years, so they have a pretty good life expectancy.
All right, and Lily says that Isla from Hampton would like to know if he is a friendly iguana.
He is a very friendly iguana. As you see, he's loving all the attention. This is pretty much his favorite thing ever, is when we sit here and give him all those back rubs. So he loves his keepers. He might take a little bit to get used to new people, but once you give him enough back scratches, he is yours.
All right, and Janet would like to know if he bites.
Anything with a mouth can bite. Technically, you could bite me. I would prefer that you don't. So he could bite if he wanted to, but he's not going to unless we really stress him out or he feels threatened. And since he's one of our ambassador animals, we like him to be nice and happy, and we don't want to stress him out. So he's not going to bite us unless we really tick him off, and we don't do that.
All right, and then Karen would like to know where at the zoo he lives.
That is a good question. So if you guys didn't know, all the animals that you're meeting here at the education station or Zoo Creates that we're doing, they are actually our animal ambassadors. And so since they're our animal ambassadors, they are ones that you will find actually off-site versus on-site. You cannot see any of these guys at the zoo unless it's a program with our education department. We do that because this is their job. They get to come out and meet people. They get to travel all over the state of Iowa and say hi to new people here and there. And so we want them to have a nice, relaxing place when we're done doing programs, and so that's why they live off-site, so you can't see them anywhere at the zoo.
We do have an exercise yard, a play yard for them called Critter Corner. It's located right by our gift shop. So sometimes during the summertime, if it's nice weather, we take our animals out there and let them exercise, get some fresh air, and just kind of get a break from where people can still see them, but they get a break from being on programs and getting touched. So that way they can just kind of enjoy the sunshine.
Moche loves that. He loves to sunbathe during the summer.
All right, Brandon wants to know, what is the consistency of the spines on his back?
That is a good question. They are, I mean, you can see here, I'm moving them. They're a little bit flexible, but they're meant for self-defense, so they are sturdy. If I came down really hard like this, that's what he's using to protect himself if something were to come down. But they're kind of like the consistency of your fingernail would be a good example, where they're flexible, but they have a nice sturdy ability to them. The males also, their spines are going to be a lot larger than the females. The females do have spines, but they're going to be more like this on his tail versus as tall as they are on his back.
All right, I think that's all the questions we have for now. Is there anything else that you can tell us about Moche?
These guys are, they're one of my favorites. I love large animals and I love large reptiles, so they are awesome guys to have around. And I think, unless you guys have more questions you would love to put at the end, I think I've given you all the fun stuff that I know about him, but I'm also willing to answer anything that you guys think of once we're done with this.
All right, I think there are two more questions just came through. Nick would like to know approximately how many iguanas there are in the world.
That is a question that, once again, I will look up and let you know. I do not know that. Population-wise, they are not threatened, but they are on the list of, I'm blanking on the word.
The IUCN list, the endangered species list?
Yep.
Yeah, so they're not threatened. It's more just like people are monitoring their populations, but they're not a threat, and they're of least concern, I think, right now.
Least concern, thank you.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of the word, but yes, in the wild, they're pretty well populated. The places like America where they are found, though, they're going to be invasive, so they're not going to be endangered there.
Yeah. All right, and then what is his chin flap called?
His chin flap is called his dewlap and his jowl. So his dewlap is the thing underneath his chin, and then his jowl are those big puffy cheeks that he has.
All right, and then how big of an enclosure does he live in again? Can you tell us?
He lives in probably about a 10 to 12 foot long and 10 foot tall enclosure. So he's got a nice room in there.
All right, now a couple times throughout the video we had a question come in about why he was nodding his head.
So that head bob can mean a bunch of different things. If we were male iguanas in the wild, that would be him saying, go away, I'm not happy with you being here. But since we are his caretakers and he likes us, that's him saying, hi, yes, you should give me more attention. And if we were a female iguana, that'd be him saying, hey, how you doing?
All right, and then Enzo would like to know where he got his name. And then if we remember what his name was when he was at the ARL. I don't think we remember his name, but can you go over how we came up with the name Moche for him?
Yes, so like Jessica said, not sure if he had this name prior to us, but his name that we came up with was Moche, because there is a tribe of Peruvian people called the Moches who actually worship these guys. They have them in a lot of their art. They treat them very well in the wild. They think of them as sacred, and so we gave him that name because he loves attention. He loves to be the center of attention and worshipped, basically. We give him back scratches, so he enjoys that. So that's where we got the name from the Peruvian tribe. Yes, you enjoy the attention.
Yes, he's agreeing with us. All right, I think those are all our questions. So if you have any last minute questions, feel free to put those in the comments and we'll answer them after the live is done. But do you have any hints for who we might see next on Education Station? When is our next Education Station?
Our next Education Station, so the plan is we'll have Education Stations on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 10:45 a.m. I actually do not know who our next guest is. It's going to depend on Keisha and Tegan because they will be the ones doing that live program on Tuesday. And as you saw with Jersey today, it very much depends day to day on what animals we're bringing.
All right.
So we also do have our Zoo Create on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10:45 as well. So keep popping in at 10:45 every day to meet another animal ambassador and either learn some cool things or make a fun little craft at home.
All right. Take care.
Thank you guys for coming. Hi, buddy.